I'm 67 years old, and I thought I knew my wife, until the morning she practically shoved me out the door to go to the doctor alone. My name is Frank Dawson, retired truck driver, 42 years, married to Diane. We live in Phoenix, Arizona, in a house we bought in 1987, 3 bedrooms, desert landscaping, a front porch where we drink coffee most mornings and watch the sun come up over the superstitions. That Tuesday started like any other. May in Phoenix means heat, the kind that makes the air shimmer by 10 a.m. I was up at 6, same as always, made coffee, sat outside. Diane joined me around 6:30, still in her bathrobe, hair pinned back. We'd both retired 5 years ago, me from long-haul trucking, her from nursing at St. Joseph's. Our routine was simple, comfortable. We liked it that way. I had a cardiology checkup scheduled for 9. Nothing serious, just the usual follow-up. High blood pressure runs in my family, so I see Dr. Morris every few months. Keep an eye on things. Diane always came with me to appointments. Always. 42 years. That's how we did it. She'd sit in the waiting room, flip through magazines, ask the doctor questions I'd forget to ask. But that morning, when I mentioned we should leave by 8:30, she looked up from her coffee with this strange expression. "I'm not going with you today," she said. I blinked. "What?" "You need to go alone, Frank. Practice a little independence." Independence. After 42 years. Since when do I need practice being independent? I asked, keeping my tone light. She stood, tightened the belt on her robe. "You rely on me too much for these things. What if something happened to me? You'd need to handle your own medical appointments." It wasn't what she said. It was how she said it. Too quick, too rehearsed. "Diane, I've been driving cross-country since before we met. I think I can handle a doctor's appointment." "Then go handle it," she said, sharper now. "I have errands to run anyway." "What errands?" "Grocery store, maybe Target. I don't know yet, Frank. Do I need to report my schedule?" That stung. We didn't talk to each other like that. I watched her disappear into the house, and something cold settled in my chest. Not anger, something quieter, unease. In 42 years, Diane had never pushed me away like this. Drop a comment. "Where are you watching from? Ever had a gut feeling something was wrong?" I finished my coffee, showered, got dressed. The whole time, I kept waiting for her to change her mind, come out and say, "You know what? I'll come with you." She didn't. When I grabbed my keys at 8:20, she was already dressed. Jeans, a blouse I didn't recognize, makeup on, for errands at Target. "Drive safe," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I always do." I walked out to my truck, a Ford F-150, 10 years old, runs like a dream. I sat behind the wheel and looked back at the house. Diane was standing at the window. When she saw me looking, she stepped back, let the curtain fall. That's when I knew. Something was wrong. I didn't know what, didn't know how wrong, but I knew. If you've ever felt that twist in your gut that says pay attention, hit subscribe, because this story's just getting started. The appointment took 20 minutes instead of 2 hours, and that accident of timing changed my entire life. I drove to the medical plaza off Indian School Road, mind still turning over Diane's behavior. The traffic was light. I parked in the shade, walked into the clinic at 8:50. Dr. Morris's office smelled like antiseptic and old magazines. I checked in with the receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes who always remembered my name, and sat down to wait. Except I didn't wait long. Usually I'd sit there for 30, 40 minutes, enough time to read half a field and stream and wonder why appointments are never on time. But today, the nurse called me back within 5 minutes. Blood pressure first, cuff tight around my arm, the machine beeping softly. 120/78, the nurse said. "Nice and steady, Mr. Dawson." "Good genes," I said. "And my wife keeps me on a clean diet." The nurse smiled, took my weight, my temperature, led me to the exam room. Dr. Morris came in 10 minutes later, a sharp guy in his 50s, calm demeanor, never rushes you. We've built a rapport over the years. "Frank," he said, shaking my hand, "how are you feeling?" "Good. No complaints." He pulled up my chart on the computer, scanned the notes, asked me the usual questions. "Any chest pain? Shortness of breath? Dizziness?" No. He listened to my heart, my lungs, had me lie back while he pressed on my abdomen. All routine. Everything looks solid, he said. Cholesterol's holding steady from last time. Blood pressure's excellent. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I almost mentioned Diane's strange behavior. Half joking, you know. My wife's acting weird, Doc. Any medical explanation for that? But I kept quiet. It felt too personal, too soon. We were supposed to do an EKG today, Dr. Morris said, glancing at his tablet. But the machine's down. Tech's coming this afternoon to fix it. Can we reschedule for next week? Sure, I said. No problem. He printed out a new appointment card. We shook hands again. I was out the door by 9:30. 20 minutes. That's all it took. I stood in the parking lot, blinking in the bright Arizona sun. My truck baked under a cloudless sky. I'd expected to be here until 11, maybe later. Now I had a whole free morning. I thought about calling Diane, telling her I was done early. Then I thought, no, surprise her. Maybe we could grab lunch somewhere, drive up to Sedona, make a day of it. That sounded nice, spontaneous, something we hadn't done in a while. I climbed into my truck, started the engine, cranked the AC, hit subscribe if you've ever had a routine day turn into something unforgettable. The drive home took 15 minutes. I felt good, relieved. My health was fine. The day was wide open. I had no idea I was driving straight into the end of my marriage. I stood in my own hallway, holding my breath, and heard sounds that no husband should ever hear coming from his bedroom. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The drive back was easy. Clear roads, the kind of morning Phoenix does best before the heat gets brutal. I kept the windows down for a minute, let the air rush through, then closed them, and let the AC take over. I thought about Diane, about her insistence that I go alone, about the makeup, the blouse I didn't recognize. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe she really did just want some space, some time to herself. 42 years is a long time to be together. People need breathing room. I tried to believe that. I pulled into our neighborhood at 10:45. Quiet streets. Most folks are already at work or inside hiding from the sun. Our house sits at the end of a cul-de-sac, ranch style, tan stucco, red tile roof. Diane's car was in the driveway. That made sense. She'd said she had errands, but maybe she hadn't left yet. Then I noticed Robert's truck. Robert Jennings, our neighbor, lived 3 houses down with his wife, Carol. We'd known them for 15 years. Barbecues together, borrowed tools, friendly waves across the yard. His truck, a silver Chevy Silverado, was parked on the street, right up against our side fence, closer than usual. Strange, but not alarming. Maybe he'd stopped by to ask Diane something. Maybe Carol had sent him over to borrow something. I pulled into the driveway, turned off the engine. The house looked normal, curtains drawn against the heat, like always. The front door closed. I grabbed my keys, walked up the path, unlocked the door as quietly as I could. Not sneaking, just didn't want to startle her if she was in the middle of something. The house was silent. Cool air from the AC, the faint hum of the refrigerator, nothing else. I set my keys on the entry table. I stood there for a moment, listening. Then I heard it, faint, upstairs, from the direction of our bedroom. Voices, not talking, just sounds. My heart started to pound. Slow, heavy thuds in my chest. I walked toward the stairs. Each step is deliberate. My mind is working through possibilities, none of them good. The sounds got clearer as I climbed. By the time I reached the top, I knew what I was about to find. But knowing didn't prepare me. I walked down the hallway, the same hallway I'd walked 10,000 times, past the photos of our kids, the framed vacation snapshots, 42 years of life together on the walls. Our bedroom door was halfway open. I stopped. I stood there, my hand on the door frame, and I heard my wife's voice, soft, breathless. I pushed the door open. 42 years of marriage ended the second I opened that bedroom door. Diane and Robert, in our bed, together. Time didn't slow down. It stopped. I've seen a lot in 67 years. I worked hard, lost people I loved, driven through bad weather, bad nights, bad stretches of road where you're not sure you'll make it through. But nothing prepares you for seeing the person you've loved for 4 decades in bed with someone else. She saw me first. Her eyes went wide. She gasped, scrambled for the sheet, pulling it up like that would somehow undo what I'd just seen. Robert froze, turned his head, looked at me standing in the doorway. For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. My mind was trying to catch up, trying to process. This was my wife. This was my neighbor. This was my bed, our bed. 42 years. Robert started to sit up, stammering. "Frank, Jesus, Frank, I held up my hand, calm, steady. "Get dressed," I said. My voice didn't shake, didn't rise, just cold, flat. "Both of you. We're going to talk." Diane's face crumpled. Tears started, but I didn't want to see them. I turned around. I walked out of the room, down the hallway, down the stairs. I stood in the living room, staring at nothing. The photos on the mantel, our wedding picture, the kids when they were small, vacations, anniversaries. All of it felt like lies now. I heard movement upstairs, footsteps, murmured voices. I waited. If this story is hitting home, leave a like and let me know. Have you ever been blindsided by someone you trusted completely? A few minutes later, they came down. Diane first, then Robert, both dressed, both looking at the floor. I stood there, hands in my pockets, and looked at the two people who'd just destroyed my life, and I realized something. I wasn't going to yell, wasn't going to break things, wasn't going to fall apart. I was going to handle this the way I'd handled everything else in my life, with control, with dignity, and with consequences they'd never forget. I gave them 5 minutes to get dressed, not out of kindness, but because I needed time to decide how to destroy them properly. I walked to the kitchen, not the living room, not outside. The kitchen, the place where Diane and I had shared breakfast every morning for 42 years, where we'd celebrated birthdays, worked through problems, planned our future. That kitchen table had seen everything. Now, it would see this. I sat down in my usual chair, pulled it out, the legs scraping against the tile. My hands were shaking, not from weakness, from adrenaline. Pure fury held in check by 67 years of learning when to act and when to think. I heard them upstairs. Hushed voices, panic, the sound of drawers opening, clothes rustling. I didn't rush them. My mind was already moving past the shock, past the image I'd never unsee, into something colder, something tactical. Evidence. I needed evidence. I pulled out my phone, opened the voice recorder app, set it on the table, pressed record. This wasn't about screaming. It wasn't about breaking down. This was about documentation, about building a case, because I knew, right then, sitting at that table, this was going to court. The sounds upstairs stopped. Footsteps on the stairs. Slow, reluctant. Diane appeared first. She'd thrown on jeans and a t-shirt. No makeup now. It was smudged, her face blotchy and pale. She wouldn't look at me. Robert came down behind her, dressed, eyes on the floor like a guilty dog. I gestured to the chairs across from me. "Sit down," I said, not loud, not angry, just a command. They sat. The kitchen was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and Diane's shaky breathing. I looked at her first. This woman I'd loved since I was 25. The woman I'd worked 70-hour weeks to provide for. The woman I'd built this entire life around. A stranger now. Then I looked at Robert, my neighbor, a man I'd lent tools to, helped move furniture, invited to our home. He couldn't meet my eyes. "I'm going to ask questions," I said. "You're going to answer them, honestly, completely, because if you lie to me right now, I promise you, it will be worse later." Diane's hands twisted in her lap. Robert shifted in his chair, mouth opening like he wanted to speak. I held up one finger. "Not yet." I reached forward, tapped my phone to make sure they saw it recording. "Now," I said, leaning back, or folding my hands, "let's talk about what I just walked in on." The silence stretched, and in that silence, I felt something shift inside me. I wasn't the victim here. I was the judge, and they were about to find out what that meant. She looked me in the eye and told me I'd become too boring to love, as if 42 years of loyalty meant nothing. I started simple. How long? Diane's eyes filled with tears. She wiped at them, shook her head. Frank, how long? She swallowed. 6 months. 6 months. Half a year. While I'd been sitting next to her every morning. While I'd kissed her goodnight. While I'd told her I loved her and believed we were happy. When did it start? I asked. She looked at Robert, then back at me. Last November. After you retired. After I retired. I'd spent 30 years on the road. Long hauls, weeks away from home. I'd retired so we could finally spend time together, so we could enjoy the years we had left. And that's when she decided I wasn't enough. Why? I asked. Frank, please. Why, Diane? Her voice cracked. Because you changed. You became, I don't know, content. You just wanted to sit around, drink coffee, watch TV. You stopped being interesting. Content. I'd worked myself to the bone for 4 decades so we could finally have peace. And she called it boring. I felt invisible, she continued, words tumbling out now like a confession she'd been holding back. You didn't talk to me anymore. Not really. You just existed. Robert listened. He asked about my day. He made me feel seen. I glanced at Robert. He was staring at the table, saying nothing. Coward. So you decided to sleep with our neighbor, I said, flat, like emotionless. It wasn't like that. What was it like, Diane? She had no answer. Did you plan this morning? I asked. The doctor's appointment, pushing me out the door. Was that on purpose? She hesitated. That was enough to answer. Say it, I said. Yes, barely a whisper. I wanted privacy. Privacy. She'd sent me to a medical appointment, something she knew I'd taken seriously, something about my health, just so she could have the house to herself with another man. Calculated, premeditated, not a mistake, a plan. I reached forward and stopped the recording. Saved the file. Thank you for being honest, I said. Diane looked up, hope flickering in her eyes like maybe honesty would earn her something. It wouldn't. Now get out of my house, I said. Frank, not you. Not yet. I pointed at Robert. Him. Get out. Robert stood so fast his chair scraped backward, but I wasn't done with him yet. Comment below. Have you ever been blamed for someone else's betrayal? This man had eaten at my table, called me friend, and repaid me by sleeping with my wife in my own bed. Robert was halfway to the door when I spoke again. Stop. He froze. I stood. I walked around the table, stopped a few feet from him. You have something to say? I asked. He stammered, hands up like he was surrendering. Frank, Jesus, man, I never meant for this to happen. It just happened. It just happened. Like the weather. Like it was a chance. You're telling me you accidentally ended up in bed with my wife? I said, voice still calm, still cold. No, look, I've been going through a lot. The divorce with Carol, I don't care about your divorce. He blinked, mouth hanging open. You sat at my table, I said. Each word is deliberate. You drank my beer. You borrowed my tools. You shook my hand, and you repaid me by sleeping with my wife in my own bed. I'm sorry. No, you're not sorry. You're scared. There's a difference. Robert's face went pale. I stepped closer, not threatening, just present. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You have 24 hours to leave this neighborhood. Sell your house, rent it out. I don't care. But if I see your truck on this street after tomorrow, I'm calling your kids. I'm calling your employer. I'm making sure everyone you know understands exactly what kind of man you are. Frank, come on. Do you understand me? He nodded, fast, desperate. Say it. I understand. Good. I stepped aside, gestured to the door. Get out. He didn't need to be told twice. Practically ran to the door, fumbled with the handle, disappeared into the bright Arizona heat. The door slammed behind him. Diane stood in the kitchen, tears streaming down her face. Frank, you can't just... I turned to look at her. Whatever she saw in my eyes made her stop talking. Sit down, I said. We're not finished. She sat. And now it was just the two of us. And 42 years. Down to this. She wanted forgiveness. I gave her a deadline. I sat back down across from her. The kitchen table between us felt like a courtroom bench. This marriage is over, I said. Simple. Final. Diane's face crumpled. Frank, please. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. But we can work through this. We can go to counseling. No. We've been together 42 years, and you threw them away this morning. She reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I pulled back. I still love you, she said, voice breaking. I know I hurt you. I know I made a horrible choice, but I still love you. We can fix this. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the woman I'd married, the woman who'd raised our children, the woman I'd trusted with every part of my life, and I saw a stranger. Do you know what hurts the most? I asked. She shook her head, tears falling. It's not an affair. It's not even Robert. I leaned forward. It's what you planned. You looked at me this morning, told me to go to the doctor alone, and you knew exactly what you were going to do the second I left. That's what I can't forgive. Please, you have 1 week to find somewhere else to live. Her eyes went wide. Frank, 1 week. I'm filing for divorce. You'll hear from my lawyer. We'll divide everything legally, but I want you out of this house. This is my house too. Then we'll sell it. But you're not staying here. She stood, frantic now. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know, Diane. Maybe Robert has a spare room. That landed. Hard. She sat back down, defeated. Is there any chance? She asked, voice small. Mo, any chance at all you'd reconsider? I stood, pushed my chair in. You made your choice this morning, I said. I'm making mine now. I walked out of the kitchen, down the hall, to the guest room, went inside, locked the door, and then, only then, did I let myself feel it. The weight of 42 years collapsing, the future I'd imagined vanishing, the life I'd built turned to dust. I sat on the edge of the bed, head in my hands, not crying, not yet, just processing. Outside, I heard Diane moving around. I heard her go upstairs. I heard the door close. The house settled into silence. Hit the like button if you believe some betrayals can never be forgiven. I stayed in that guest room for an hour, maybe more, and when I finally stood up, something had changed. I wasn't broken. I was done being the victim. It was time to build my case, time to protect myself, time to make sure that when this was over, I'd walk away with my dignity intact, because Diane and Robert had made their choices. Now I was going to make sure they lived with the consequences. I learned that divorce isn't about anger. It's about protecting what you built, while someone else tried to tear it down. The morning after I locked myself in the guest room, I called my brother Paul. He's 69, lives in Scottsdale, and has been through his own divorce about 10 years back. Different circumstances. His ex-wife didn't cheat. They just grew apart. But he knew the legal landscape, knew what it took to survive it. The phone rang 3 times. Frankie, he answered. Still calls me that. Always has. What's going on? I need a divorce attorney, I said. A good one. Silence on the other end. And then, what happened? I told him. Quick, clinical. Caught Diane with Robert. 6 months. I planned it. Done. Paul didn't waste time with sympathy. That's not how we operate. Sharon Reeves, he said immediately. She handled my buddy Ted's divorce 2 years ago. The wife cleaned out the bank account and ran off with a personal trainer. Sharon made sure Ted got everything back and then some. She's expensive, but she's worth it. Get me her number. He did. I called her office within the hour. Sharon Reeves was in her mid-50s, sharp voice, no nonsense. Her assistant scheduled me for that same afternoon. She'd had a cancellation, she said, and this sounded urgent. I drove to her office in Tempe. Glass building, 10th floor, corner office with a view of the valley. Sharon was tall, gray hair pulled back, handshake firm enough to mean business. Mr. Dawson, she said, gesturing to a chair. Tell me everything. I did. I played her the recording, gave her the timeline, explained the premeditation, Diane pushing me to the doctor alone, Robert's truck in the driveway, the bedroom. Sharon listened, took notes, and didn't interrupt. When I finished, she sat back, tapped her pen against the legal pad. Arizona is a no-fault state, she said, which means the affair itself doesn't determine whether you get divorced. You're entitled to that regardless, but adultery absolutely impacts asset division and spousal support. I want the house, I said. My truck. My pension stays mine. The house will depend on how it's titled and when it was purchased. But given the circumstances and this recording, we can make a strong case. On your pension, if you earned it before the marriage, it's yours. If it was earned during, it's community property. But we can negotiate. What about her? If she wants spousal support, we'll fight it. She's retired, has her own work history, and committed adultery in the marital home. A judge will consider that. I nodded. I don't want revenge. I want fairness, and I want this done clean. Sharon smiled. Small, professional. Then we'll get along fine. I'll draw up the petition today. We can have her served within 48 hours. Do it. We shook hands. I left. 2 days later, Diane was served. I was at the hardware store when it happened. Deliberately. I didn't want to be there for it. When I came home, she was sitting at the kitchen table, papers spread out in front of her, face white. She looked up at me. "Now you're really doing this." "I told you I was. I thought you might change your mind." I set my keys on the counter. "I won't." She stared at the papers, hands shaking. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret, just grim resolution. The wheels of justice had started turning, and I was going to see them through to the end. In a neighborhood where people have known each other for decades, betrayal doesn't stay secret, and forgiveness doesn't come easy. Word spreads fast in a place like ours. We've lived in this neighborhood for 23 years. Same families, same cookouts, same Christmas lights every December. People know each other, care about each other, and they talk. Within 3 days of Diane being served, everyone knew. I didn't tell them, didn't have to. Robert disappeared, moved out overnight, truck gone, and house suddenly empty. Diane was visibly distraught, barely leaving the house except to get mail, and I was calm, civil, tight-lipped. People noticed. Linda Morrison, who lives 2 doors down, caught me getting the mail on a Thursday morning. "Frank," she said, walking over with her dog, "is everything okay? We noticed Robert's gone, and Diane seems—" She trailed off, not wanting to pry, but clearly concerned. I looked at her. Linda's a good woman. 72, widowed, always brought us cookies at Christmas. Diane had an affair with Robert, I said. Flat, honest. I'm filing for divorce. Her face went pale, then red. "Oh, Frank, I'm so sorry. Not your fault. Is there anything I can do?" "No, but thank you for asking." She squeezed my arm, eyes fierce. "You deserve better than that." I nodded, went back inside. By that evening, the whole street knew. I saw it the next time I went to Safeway. Ran into Diane in the produce section. She was grabbing apples, looked exhausted, bags under her eyes. 2 women from the neighborhood were in the same aisle. They saw Diane, exchanged glances, and walked away without saying hello. Cold, deliberate. Diane noticed. I saw it in the way her shoulders sagged. She left her cart and walked out. I finished my shopping. The social punishment was swift. Friends who'd called Diane regularly stopped, and women she'd had coffee with for years didn't return her texts. At the neighborhood HOA meeting, one I didn't attend but heard about, someone mentioned her name, and the room went quiet. In our generation, loyalty still matters. You don't cheat on your spouse of 42 years and expect people to look the other way. Robert, who'd fled to Tucson, got hit harder. His adult son, Michael, heard about it. I don't know how. Maybe through the neighborhood grapevine. Maybe Diane reached out and called Robert demanding answers. I know because Michael called me too. "Mr. Dawson," he said, voice tight with anger. "I just heard what my father did. Jesus, I'm so sorry. That's inexcusable." "Your father made his choices," I said. "You're not responsible for them. Still, I wanted you to know I told him he's a coward, and I won't be speaking to him for a while." That call meant more to me than it probably should have, but it confirmed something. The consequences weren't just legal or financial. They were social, familial, permanent. Diane became an outcast, and I became the wronged man everyone rallied around. I didn't gloat, didn't spread stories or badmouth her. I didn't have to. The truth did the work for me. My brother told me something that night that changed everything. "She broke your trust, Frankie. Don't let her break your spirit." Paul showed up on a Friday evening, unannounced, carrying a 12-pack of Coors and 2 pizzas. I opened the door and he just nodded. Garage? Yeah. We walked through the house, still full of Diane's things, half-packed boxes in the corner, and out to the garage. I've spent a lot of time out here over the years. A workbench, tools, a couple of lawn chairs I'd set up for when I just needed space. Neutral territory. Paul handed me a beer, opened his own, sat down with a grunt. So, he said, you holding up? I'm fine. He raised an eyebrow. Frankie, it's me. I had a long drink, sighed. I'm managing. Paul nodded. We sat in silence for a while, the way brothers can. No pressure to fill the quiet. Finally, he spoke. Will I ever tell you about the first month after Susan left? Not really. I was a wreck, he said. Didn't sleep. I barely ate. Kept thinking about everything I'd done wrong, every sign I'd missed. I thought I was losing my mind. I looked at him. How'd you get through it? Time. And realizing something important, he turned to face me. Anger? That's normal. You're gonna feel it. But it can't become who you are. You hear me? I hear you. You're gonna be tempted to stay bitter, to let this eat at you. Don't. He leaned forward. Focus on what comes next, not what was lost. I stared at the concrete floor. I feel like an idiot, Paul. 42 years and I didn't see it. Didn't even suspect. That's not being an idiot. That's called trusting your wife. Yeah. And look where that got me. Paul set his beer down, voice firm. Listen to me. You trusted her because that's who you are. You're a loyal man, a good man. Don't let her actions change that. Don't let her take that from you. I felt something crack in my chest, not breaking, shifting. She broke your trust, Frankie, Paul said quietly. Don't let her break your spirit. We sat with that for a long moment. Then Paul grabbed a slice of pizza, handed me one. Now eat. You look like hell. I laughed, short, rough, but real. We spent the next 2 hours talking, not just about Diane, about everything. Work we'd done, places we'd been, stupid things we'd done as kids. By the time Paul left, I felt steadier. Not healed, not close, but steadier. I walked back into the house, locked the door, and realized something. I wasn't alone in this. I had people, family, support. Diane had chosen to throw away 42 years, but I still had a life to build, and I was going to build it on my terms. The hardest part wasn't the anger. It was learning to live in a house full of memories with a woman who was never really there. Diane moved out 6 days after being served. Her cousin Rita, who lives in Mesa, offered her a place to stay. Diane packed up her clothes, some personal items, and left the rest. Said she'd come back for the furniture once the divorce was settled. I helped her load the car, not out of kindness, out of necessity. The faster she left, the better. She cried the whole time, kept apologizing, kept saying she'd made a mistake, kept asking if I was sure. I was sure. When her car pulled out of the driveway for the last time, I stood there watching until she turned the corner. Then I went inside, and the silence hit me like a wall. The house was full. Furniture, photos, 42 years of accumulated life, but it felt empty. I walked through the rooms slowly. The living room where we'd watch TV every night, kitchen where we'd shared thousands of meals, bedroom where we'd slept side by side for decades. All of it is the same. All of it is different. That first night, I cooked dinner for one. Grilled cheese and tomato soup. Ate it in front of the TV, some old Western I wasn't really watching. Went to bed at 9. I couldn't sleep. Stared at the ceiling until past midnight. Then got up, made coffee, sat on the porch in the dark. The nights were the hardest. During the day, I could stay busy, run errands, meet with Sharon, talk to Paul, keep my mind occupied. But at night, the quiet was crushing. Some mornings I'd wake up and reach for her before I remembered. That was the worst. The forgetting, then the remembering. But slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice. Something shifted. I started realizing I didn't miss her. I missed the idea of her, the version of her I'd thought existed, the woman I'd been married to, the real one, the one who'd planned an affair while I sat at a cardiologist's office. I didn't miss her at all. That distinction mattered. It meant I wasn't mourning a person. I was mourning an illusion, and illusions once shattered don't deserve grief. The anger faded, Not completely, maybe it never would, but enough. What remained was something clearer. Determination. I was 67 years old. I'd spent 42 years building a life with someone who didn't value it. I wasn't going to waste the years I had left doing the same. The quiet stopped being my enemy. It became my friend. In the silence, I could think, plan, rebuild. One morning, about 3 weeks after Diane left, I woke up and didn't reach for her. I got up, made coffee, sat on the porch and watched the sun rise, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. Not happiness, not yet, but peace. It was a start. I walked into that gym at 67 years old, overweight and heartbroken, and walked out 6 months later, a different man. 3 weeks after Diane moved out, I woke up and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. Really looked. Gray hair, lines around my eyes, a gut I'd been carrying for 10 years, telling myself it was fine, I'd earned it. But the eyes, those bothered me most. They looked hollow, defeated, and I thought, this is it? This is how the story ends? 67 years old, betrayed, alone, waiting to fade away in an empty house? Number 1, I made a decision right there. I would not rot. That morning, I drove to the Planet Fitness near my house. I'd passed it 1,000 times, never gone in. It was one of those 24-hour places, purple and yellow, always busy. I walked in at 9 a.m. The kid at the front desk, couldn't have been more than 20, smiled at me like I wasn't out of place. First time? He asked. Yeah. Welcome. Let me get you set up. He gave me the tour. Treadmills, weight machines, stretching area, locker room. Explained how everything worked, and signed me up for a basic membership, $10 a month, no commitment. I started that day. Treadmill first, 15 minutes on a slow walk. My knees ached, my lungs burned, but I finished. Then light weights, nothing heavy, 10-pound dumbbells, basic curls, shoulder presses. I felt ridiculous, weak, surrounded by younger people who moved through their routines like it was nothing, but nobody stared. Nobody laughed. I went back the next day, and the day after that. By the end of the first week, a trainer approached me. Miguel, mid-30s, built like a tank, but friendly. You're here every day, he said. That's good. Mind if I give you a few pointers? Please. He adjusted my form on the machines, showed me stretches to prevent injury, and suggested a simple routine I could manage. You keep showing up like this, he said. You'll see results. It just takes time. Time. I had plenty of that now. The gym became structured, routine, a reason to get out of the house, and I needed that because the house still felt like a museum of failure. So I tackled that too. I started with Diane's stuff, the things she'd left behind, said she'd come back for but never did. Boxes of clothes, books she never read, decorations I'd always hated but kept because she liked them. I loaded it all into my truck, drove it to Goodwill, donated every last piece. Then, I rearranged the furniture, moved the couch, changed the layout of the living room. It didn't look like our house anymore. It looked like mine. The bedroom was last. Diane had chosen floral wallpaper 20 years ago. I'd always thought it was too busy, too much, but I'd never said anything. I tore it down, every strip. It took me 2 days. Then I painted, pale blue, simple, clean. When I finished, I stood in the doorway and looked at the room. It was mine now, not ours, mine. I slept better that night than I had in months. The soreness from the gym, the exhaustion from the work. It was good pain, earned pain. I was building something, not a marriage, not a shared life, just me, and that felt right. Turns out, when you're not trying to please someone who'll never be satisfied, you remember who you actually are. I'd always loved woodworking. Back when I was in my 20s, before trucking took over my life, I used to build things. Small stuff, shelves, picture frames, little projects that gave me something to do with my hands. Diane never cared for it, said it made too much mess, too much noise, said the garage should be for cars, not hobbies. Over the years, I just stopped, put the tools in storage, forgot about them. But one afternoon, about a month after she left, I was cleaning out the garage and found them. Table saw, hand tools, sanders, all buried under old boxes and tarps. I pulled them out, wiped off the dust, Set up a small workshop in the corner of the garage. Nothing fancy, just a workbench, some pegboard for tools, decent lighting. Started simple, a birdhouse. Sounds stupid, maybe, but I drew up plans, measured the wood, and cut the pieces. The smell of sawdust, the sound of the saw, it brought back something I'd forgotten. Joy, not happiness exactly, just satisfaction, the kind you get from making something with your own hands. I finished the birdhouse over the weekend, hung it in the backyard. 2 days later, a sparrow moved in. I built a bookshelf next, then a small side table. Every evening after the gym, I'd come home, eat dinner, then spend an hour or two in the garage, working, creating. It quieted my mind in ways nothing else did. Around the same time, I rediscovered music. I've always loved classic rock, Led Zeppelin, Creedence, The Stones, blues too, Muddy Waters, B.B. King. Diane preferred silence, or worse, those smooth jazz stations that all sounded the same, so I'd stop listening. I wore headphones if I wanted music. Keep it low. Now, I went to a vintage shop in Tempe and bought a record player. Not expensive, just functional. Then I hit up a used record store and spent 2 hours flipping through bins, pulling albums I hadn't heard in decades. Brought them home, set up the player in the living room. That first night, I put on Who's Next by The Who, poured myself a bourbon, and then just listened, really listened. It felt like coming home to a part of myself I'd left behind. Paul noticed the change. He came by one Saturday, saw the workshop, heard the music, raised his eyebrows. "You're turning into a whole new person," he said. "No," I said. "I'm just remembering who I was before I spent 40 years trying to be who she wanted." Paul nodded, clapped me on the shoulder. "Good," he said, "because that guy, he's better." He also invited me to something I didn't expect, a veterans breakfast group. Meets every other Thursday at a diner off Bell Road. Bunch of retired guys, military mostly, some law enforcement, a couple of truckers like me. I'd never been a joiner, never sought out groups or clubs, but Paul insisted, so I went, and I'm glad I did. The guys were good people, straightforward, no pity, no awkward questions, just shared stories, drank bad coffee, talked about life. One of them, a guy named Ed who'd been a Marine, asked me how I was doing. I told him the whole story. He listened, then said, "My ex-wife did something similar, different details, same betrayal. It gets easier, not fast, but it does." That mattered, hearing from someone who'd been through it. I started going regularly, and I realized something I hadn't noticed before. I'd been isolated. During the marriage, Diane hadn't liked me spending time with friends, said it took me away from her, from the family, so I'd let those friendships fade, stopped reaching out, stayed home. I thought I was being a good husband. Turns out, I was just being controlled. Now, with her gone, I was finding connection again, not just with people, with myself, and it felt damn good. And I spent 42 years asking permission to live. 3 weeks on the road taught me I never needed it. 4 months after Diane moved out, I bought an RV, nothing fancy. A used Winnebago, 20 feet, good engine, clean interior. Cost me 12 grand from a dealership in Tempe. I'd always wanted one. Always wanted to just hit the road. See the country without schedules, without itineraries, without someone telling me where we had to be and when. Diane hated the idea. She wanted resorts, hotels with room service, guided tours with air conditioning. Anytime I mentioned buying an RV, she'd shut it down. "We're not spending our retirement living like vagrants, Frank." So I dropped it. But now, nobody to ask permission from. I bought it on a Tuesday, spent the next week stocking it. Food, clothes, maps, camping gear. I planned a route, Phoenix to the Grand Canyon, up through Utah's national parks, Zion, Bryce Canyon, Arches, then northeast into Montana. 3 weeks, give or take. Paul thought I was crazy. "You're driving to Montana? Alone? In an RV?" "Yeah. Why Montana?" "Because I've never been, and because I want to." He laughed, shook his head. "You've changed, Frankie." Good. I left on a Sunday morning, early. The sun is just breaking over the desert. The first day, I drove to the Grand Canyon, parked at a campground on the south rim, walked out to the edge, and just stood there. I'd been before years ago with Diane and the kids, but this time felt different. I wasn't rushing, wasn't checking a schedule. I wasn't worried about anyone else's experience. I sat on a bench and watched the sun set over the canyon, colors bleeding across the rocks, reds, oranges, purples, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years, free. The next 2 weeks blurred together in the best way. Sunrise over Zion's red cliffs, campfire dinners under stars so thick you could barely see the black between them, conversations with other travelers, retirees like me, young couples, families. I kept a journal, nothing profound, just notes. On what I saw, what I felt. I took photos, not for anyone else, just for me. In Bryce Canyon, I hiked down into the hoodoos, those strange rock formations that look like towers. My knees hurt, my lungs burned, but I made it. Sat on a rock halfway down, caught my breath, and laughed. 67 years old, hiking alone in Utah. Diane would have hated this. I loved it. By the time I reached Montana, rolling plains, big sky, air so clean it hurt, I felt like a different person. Not because the pain was gone, it wasn't, but because I'd proven something to myself. I didn't need her permission to be happy. I didn't need anyone's. I could wake up, choose a direction, and go. That's freedom. The trip wasn't about escaping. It was about proving. Proving I could be alone without being lonely. Proving I could be happy on my own terms. Proving that 67 wasn't the end. It was a beginning. I drove back to Phoenix after 3 weeks, the RV packed with memories, the odometer showing 2,000 miles. Pulled into my driveway, turned off the engine, and looked at the house. It was just a house, not a prison, not a museum, just a place I lived. The real home wasn't the building, it was me, and I'd finally found my way back. I wasn't looking for someone new, but sometimes life introduces you to people exactly when you need them most. Back in Phoenix, settled into my routine again, I saw a flyer at the hardware store, community woodworking class, beginner's welcome, Saturdays, 10 a.m. I almost didn't go. I knew the basics already and didn't need a class, but I was curious, and honestly, the house felt too quiet on weekends, so I showed up. The class met in a community center workshop. 10 people, mix of ages, all skill levels. The instructor, a retired carpenter named Jim, walked us through a project, building a small cutting board. I set up at a workbench, got my materials, and started measuring. The woman next to me looked at her wood like it might bite her. "First time?" I asked. She laughed. "That obvious?" "A little bit." "I'm Carol," she said, extending her hand. "Frank." We worked side by side for the next 2 hours. She asked questions. How to measure accurately, which to use, why the grain mattered. I answered, showed her techniques, and helped her make the cuts. She was sharp, caught on quick. By the end of class, her cutting board looked better than mine. "You're a natural," I said, or I had a good teacher. We cleaned up our stations, walked out together. "Coffee?" she asked. "There's a place next door. My treat. For the help." "Sure." We sat outside, desert heat starting to build, drank iced coffee, and talked. Carol was 64, retired school teacher, 5th grade, 30 years, widowed 3 years ago. Her husband, Tom, died of cancer. No kids, just her. She'd taken up woodworking because Tom had always wanted to learn but never had time. "Feels like I'm doing it for both of us," she said. I understood that. I told her about Diane. Not everything, just the broad strokes. Married 42 years, affair, divorce. She didn't flinch, didn't offer pity. "People are capable of terrible things," she said. "Even people we love. Yeah, but we survive, and we keep going." We talked for an hour. Easy conversation, no pressure. She had this directness I appreciated. No games, no pretense. When we finished, she pulled out her phone. "Can I get your number, in case I have woodworking questions?" I smiled. "Sure." We exchanged numbers. A week later, she texted, "Art fair downtown Saturday. Want to come?" I thought about it, then replied, "Sure. What time?" We met at the fair. I walked through rows of booths, paintings, sculptures, jewelry, grabbed lunch from a food truck. I talked more. She told me about her students, the funny things kids say, the challenges of teaching. I told her about trucking, road trips, and Montana. It was nice. Not romantic. Not yet, anyway. Just comfortable. Like talking to someone who understood loss without needing to fix it. At the end of the day, walking back to our cars, she said, "I had fun today." "Me too. Let's do it again sometime." "I'd like that." I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. I wasn't looking for someone to replace Diane. I wasn't looking to jump into another relationship. But Carol, she was different. She wasn't a replacement. She was something entirely new. A friend. Maybe more, eventually. But for now, friendship was enough. More than enough. For the first time since I'd walked through that bedroom door and watched my life shatter, I felt something besides pain or determination. I felt hope, not for what was, for what could be. And that was worth holding on to. She wanted me to save her from the consequences of her own choices. I wanted her to finally face them. 3 months after I filed for divorce, my phone buzzed with a text I didn't expect. "Diane, can we talk? Please, coffee. I need to see you." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, block her number, move on. But another part, the part that had loved her for 42 years, was curious. Not hopeful, just curious. I texted back, 1 hour, Starbucks on Shea. That's it. Neutral ground, public place, an escape route if I needed it. She arrived 10 minutes late, which was typical, but she looked different, thinner. Hair is not done the way she used to keep it. Clothes wrinkled like she'd pulled them from a laundry basket. She sat down across from me, hands wrapped around a coffee cup I'd already bought for her. I remembered her order after all these years. Muscle memory. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. I nodded, didn't speak. "Frank, I've been going through a lot." "I'm sure you have." She flinched at my tone. Cold, flat. "Robert's gone," she said. "He left, right after the divorce filing went public. Said he couldn't handle the scrutiny, the judgment. He moved to California, hasn't contacted me since." "Okay." "My cousin Rita kicked me out, said I was bringing too much drama. I'm staying with a friend now, but it's temporary. I'm struggling, Frank. Financially, emotionally." I waited. There had to be more. "I've had time to think," she continued, tears starting now. "About what I did, about what I threw away. Frank, I made a terrible mistake. The worst mistake of my life. Yes, you did. I realize that now. I realize what I had with you, what we built together, and her voice cracked. "I want to fix it. I want another chance." There it was. I leaned back, eyes studied her face. She looked desperate, broken, but not changed. "Why now?" I asked. "What? Why do you want to fix it now? 7 months ago you were perfectly happy sleeping with Robert in our bed. What's different?" She wiped her eyes. "I wasn't happy, Frank. I was confused, lost. I felt invisible in our marriage. Robert made me feel seen." "Stop." She looked up, startled. "I don't want to hear about how Robert made you feel," I said. "I don't want to hear excuses. What I want to know is this. If Robert hadn't left you, if your cousin hadn't kicked you out, if you weren't struggling financially, would you be sitting here asking for another chance?" She opened her mouth. I closed it. "That's what I thought. Frank, please. You don't miss me, Diane. You miss stability. You miss having someone to take care of you. You miss not facing consequences. That's not fair." "Fair?" I almost laughed. "You planned an affair. You sent me to a doctor's appointment so you could have privacy with another man. You threw away 42 years because I became boring after I retired. And now you want to talk about fair?" She was crying hard now, but I felt nothing. No anger, no sympathy, nothing. "I can't take back what I did," she said. "But people make mistakes. People change. We could go to counseling. We could—" "No, Frank." I said no, Diane. "It's over. It's been over since the moment I walked into that bedroom." She reached across the table, tried to take my hand. I pulled back. "I still love you," she whispered. "No, you don't. You love the idea of not being alone. There's a difference." I stood up, pulled out my wallet, left 20 on the table. "That should cover your coffee," I said. "You're just going to walk away?" Her voice rose. "After everything we had? You're that cold?" I looked down at her. really looked, and I saw a stranger. I'm not cold, Diane. I'm done. There's a difference. I walked out of that Starbucks and didn't look back. Got in my truck, sat there for a moment. My phone buzzed. A text from her. You'll regret this. I deleted it, blocked her number, and drove home. The door wasn't just closed. It was locked, bolted, sealed forever, and I felt lighter than I had in months. The judge looked at 42 years of marriage and 6 months of betrayal and made the only fair decision. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late September, Maricopa County Superior Court, downtown Phoenix. I'd been there once before, years ago, for jury duty. Now I was back for something I never imagined I'd need. Sharon Reeves met me outside the courtroom at 8:30. Sharp suit, leather briefcase, calm demeanor. You ready? She asked. As I'll ever be. Good. Remember, let me do the talking. Answer questions if the judge asks, but keep it short and factual, no emotion. Got it. We walked into the courtroom. A small, wood-paneled American flag in the corner. The judge's bench loomed at the front. Diane was already there with her attorney, a public defender named Martinez. Young guy, maybe 30, looked overwhelmed. Diane wouldn't meet my eyes. The judge entered. Honorable Patricia Kincaid, late 50s, no-nonsense expression. All rise. We stood, sat when instructed. Judge Kincaid reviewed the case file, flipping through pages, her face unreadable. This is a petition for dissolution of marriage, she said. Frank Dawson, petitioner. Diane Dawson, respondent. 42 years of marriage. Grounds cited, irretrievable breakdown due to adultery. She looked up. Mr. Martinez, does your client contest the grounds? Martinez stood. No, Your Honor. Adultery is acknowledged. Very well. Judge Kincaid turned to Sharon. Ms. Reeves, please present your argument regarding asset division. Sharon stood, calm and precise. Your Honor, we're seeking the following. Mr. Dawson retains sole ownership of the marital home at 4782 Desert View Lane, Phoenix. The home was purchased in 1987, deed in Mr. Dawson's name. Mortgage paid off in 2019 primarily through his earnings as a long-haul truck driver. We're also requesting he retain his 2014 Ford F-150, his pension from Swift Transportation, and his personal tools and belongings. She paused, pulled out a document. We're requesting minimal spousal support to Mrs. Dawson, given her employability as a retired registered nurse with full pension benefits from St. Joseph's Hospital, and given the circumstances of the marriage's dissolution, namely, a 6-month extramarital affair conducted in the marital home. Judge Kincaid nodded. Mr. Martinez? Martinez stood, glanced at Diane, then back at the judge. Your Honor, we acknowledge the affair. However, Mrs. Dawson contributed to the household during the marriage. She worked full-time as a nurse for 30 years, managed the home, raised 2 children. We're requesting she receive half the value of the marital home, either through sale or buyout, an ongoing spousal support of $1,500 per month. Sharon didn't even flinch. Judge Kincaid reviewed the financial records, tax returns, bank statements, pension documentation. The room was silent except for the rustle of papers. Finally, she looked up. Here's my ruling, she said. Mr. Dawson retains sole ownership of the marital home. Mrs. E. Dawson will receive a one-time settlement of $45,000, representing her equitable share of home equity and marital savings. No ongoing spousal support will be awarded, given both parties have independent pension income and Mrs. Dawson's employability. Martinez started to object. Judge Kincaid held up a hand. Mrs. Dawson engaged in a calculated extramarital affair in the marital home. That behavior demonstrates a fundamental breach of marital trust and responsibility. While Arizona is a no-fault state, I have discretion in asset division, and I find Mr. Dawson's requests reasonable and fair under these circumstances. She signed the documents. Divorce granted. This marriage is dissolved. Both parties are free to remarry. The gavel came down. It was over, just like that. 42 years. Ended with a signature and a gavel strike. Sharon and I stood. She gathered her files. Outside the courtroom, she shook my hand. "You did well there," she said. "You did the work. We both did." She smiled. "It's over, Frank. Legally, officially. You're a free man." I believed her. I walked out of that courthouse into the bright Arizona sun, got in my truck, and sat there for a minute. Free. The word felt strange, but it also felt right. I started the engine and drove home. To my house. My life. Mine. Robert thought he could run from what he did. Turns out, you can't outrun your own children's judgment. I didn't think about Robert much after he fled. He was irrelevant. A coward who disappeared the second thing got difficult. But Paul kept me updated. Not because I asked, just because news travels in circles, and Paul heard things. About 3 months after the affair came out, Paul stopped by with information. "Have you heard about Robert?" he asked. "No, and I don't really care." "Fair enough, but I figured you'd want to know he's not doing great." I looked up from the workbench. "I'm listening." His kids confronted him, found out through the neighborhood grapevine. His daughter, Emily, I think her name is, drove to Tucson, showed up at his apartment, demanded answers, and she told him he was a disgrace, that she couldn't respect a man who'd betray a neighbor, a friend, someone who'd been nothing but decent to him. She cut contact. Completely. I set down the sanding block I'd been holding. His son Michael did the same. Paul continued. Told Robert he was ashamed to share his last name. Both kids want nothing to do with him. That hit harder than I expected. Not because I felt sorry for Robert, but because I understood what that meant. A man estranged from his children. That's a fate worse than most. "There's more," Paul said. "He was doing some part-time consulting work, engineering stuff. Lost the contract after showing up drunk to a meeting. Twice. He's drinking? Heavily, from what I hear. Living in some cheap apartment. No friends, no family contact, just alone." I didn't say anything for a long moment. Paul watched me. "You feel bad for him?" "No," I said honestly. "I don't feel anything for him. That's the thing. I just don't care." And I meant it. Robert had made his choices. He'd run instead of facing consequences. He'd lost his children's respect, his work, his community. None of that was my doing. It was his. Actions have consequences. That's not revenge. That's just reality. "Thanks for letting me know," I said to Paul. "You sure you're okay?" "I'm fine. Robert's not my problem anymore. He's not even a thought." Paul nodded, clapped me on the shoulder. And that was the last time we talked about him. Robert Jennings became what he deserved to be. A footnote. A warning. A reminder that cowardice catches up with you eventually. And I moved on. Betrayal showed me who she really was. But more importantly, it reminded me who I am. Late one night, about a year after everything started, I sat in my workshop in the garage. I was building a rocking chair. Solid oak, mortise and tenon joints. The kind of piece that lasts generations. My daughter was pregnant, first grandchild, a boy, due in 3 months. This chair was for him. As I worked, hands steady on the wood, I thought about the past year. The worst year of my life in some ways, but also the best. I'd lost a marriage, but I'd gained myself. That sounds like a cliche, I know. But it's true. For 42 years, I'd shaped my life around someone else, around what Diane wanted, what she needed, what would make her happy. And it was never enough. Not because I wasn't enough, because she was never going to be satisfied. Some people are like that. They blame everyone around them for their own emptiness. I understand that now. The betrayal wasn't about me. It was about her, her fear of aging, her dissatisfaction with a quiet life, her inability to find peace in what we'd built. That's on her, not me. And in a strange way, I'm grateful. Not for the pain, not for the humiliation, but for the awakening. I was sleepwalking through life, comfortable, sure, but numb. The betrayal forced me to wake up, to rediscover who I was outside of that marriage, to rebuild, to grow, to become someone I'm actually proud of. I'm healthier now than I've been in 20 years, stronger, more connected to people who actually matter. I've learned that love requires honesty, that loyalty is non-negotiable, that self-respect isn't selfish, it's survival. I've learned that starting over at 67 isn't just possible, it's necessary. The rocking chair was taking shape under my hands, smooth curves, sturdy joints, built to last. I ran my hand over the armrest, felt the grain of the wood. This chair would hold my grandson, would rock him to sleep, would be passed down, maybe, to his children. I was building something that mattered, not just furniture, a legacy, a future. I thought about Diane sometimes. I wondered if she was okay, if she'd found peace, but mostly I didn't think about her at all. She was part of my past. Carol, my new friend, was part of my present, maybe my future. Paul, the veterans group, the woodworking class, those were my community now. The life I was building, that was mine. Betrayal had shown me who Diane really was, but more importantly, it reminded me who I am. A man of integrity, of strength, of resilience. A man who could be knocked down and get back up. A man who deserved better than what she'd given. I finished sanding the chair's armrest, blew off the dust. Tomorrow I'd apply the first coat of finish. The day after, another. Layer by layer, until it was complete. That's how healing works too. One day at a time, one choice at a time, until you look up and realize you're not just surviving, you're thriving. I turned off the workshop light, locked the garage, walked back into my house. It was quiet, but not lonely, peaceful. I poured myself a bourbon, put on some Creedence, sat in my chair, and I smiled, not because the pain was gone, but because I knew I'd survive it. I already had. I'm telling you this story, not because I need you to know what happened to me, but because someone out there needs to know they'll survive what's happening to them. I want to talk to you directly for a minute. If you've made it this far, you've heard my story, the whole ugly truth of it. My wife's betrayal, the discovery, the divorce, the rebuilding. And maybe you're wondering why I'm sharing this. It's not for pity. I don't need that. It's not for revenge. Diane and Robert have faced their own consequences. I don't need to add to them. I'm sharing this because silence protects betrayers, and I'm done protecting people who don't deserve it. I'm sharing this for the man sitting at home right now. I'm feeling like something's off in his marriage, but telling himself he's paranoid. Trust your instincts. You're not crazy. I'm sharing this for the guy who just discovered his wife's affair and thinks his life is over at 65, 70, 75. It's not over. I promise you. It's just different. I'm sharing this for the man who's been told he's too old to start over, too set in his ways to change, too broken to heal. That's a lie. I'm proof. I know what it feels like to have your entire world collapse, to look at 42 years of marriage and wonder if any of it was real. I know the shame, the anger, the gut-wrenching loneliness at 3 a.m. when you wake up in an empty bed and remember why. I know what it's like to feel like a fool, to replay every moment, every sign you missed, every time you trusted when you shouldn't have. But I also know what comes after, the strength you didn't know you had, the people who stand by you when everything falls apart, the version of yourself you become when you stop living for someone else and start living for you. I'm 68 years old now. This happened just over a year ago, and I'm happier than I've been in decades, not because I'm glad the marriage ended, but because I'm glad I survived it ending. If you're going through something similar, whether it's betrayal, divorce, loss, or just the quiet realization that you've been living someone else's life instead of your own, I want you to know something. You're stronger than you think. You're not alone. And your story doesn't end here. Leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me your story if you want. Or just tell me you're still standing, because that matters. We're building something here. A community of men who've been knocked down and got back up. Men who refuse to let betrayal, age, or circumstance define them. Men who know that loyalty, dignity, and self-respect aren't old-fashioned. They're essential. You belong here. And I'm damn glad you're still here. 42 years taught me who I thought she was. One morning taught me who she actually was. And the year after taught me who I really am. Let me leave you with the things I learned. The lessons that got me through the worst year of my life and brought me out the other side. First, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. Don't talk yourself out of what you know in your gut. Second, document everything. I recorded that conversation in my kitchen. It saved me in court. Protect yourself with evidence, with witnesses, with records. On third, surround yourself with loyal people. My brother Paul, attorney Sharon Reeves, Miguel at the gym, the Veterans Breakfast Group. I wouldn't have made it without them. Find your people. Lean on them. Let them help. Fourth, don't let betrayal define you. What happened to me was about Diane's choices, not my worth. The same applies for you. Someone else's betrayal doesn't diminish who you are. Fifth, rebuild deliberately. I didn't just survive. I rebuilt. Gym, woodworking, road trip, new connections. I took control of my life instead of letting circumstances control me. Sixth, forgiveness is optional. Healing is not. I don't forgive Diane. Maybe I never will, but I've healed anyway. You don't have to forgive someone to move forward. You just have to stop letting them live rent-free in your head. Like seventh, age is no barrier to new beginnings. I started over at 67. You can start over at 70, 80, 90. It's never too late to build a life you're proud of. Eighth, loyalty matters. In a world that tries to tell you everything's relative, that commitment doesn't matter. That vows are just words. Don't believe it. Loyalty matters. Character matters. Integrity matters. And people who don't value those things will eventually show you exactly who they are. Ninth, self-respect is non-negotiable. I could have taken Diane back, could have forgiven the affair, tried to rebuild, but I would have lost myself in the process. Self-respect isn't selfish, it's survival. And finally, you're not alone. Whatever you're going through, someone else has survived it. Reach out, talk to people, build community. We're in this together. I want to thank some people before I go. Paul, my brother, you kept me sane. You reminded me I was worth fighting for. Sharon Reeves, you fought for me when I didn't have the strength to fight for myself. Miguel, you taught me that strength isn't just physical. It's showing up every day, even when you don't want to. Carol, you showed me that connection is possible after loss, that friendship, maybe even love, can bloom in the ruins. And to my community, my neighborhood, the people who stood by me when gossip could have gone either way, thank you. Your loyalty meant everything. Betrayal revealed who mattered. And that clarity, that's a gift. So here's my final message to you. 42 years taught me who I thought she was. One morning taught me who she actually was. And the year after taught me who I really am. I'm a man who values loyalty, who refuses to settle, who rebuilds when everything falls apart. I'm a man who's been betrayed, broken, and rebuilt, and I'm still standing. You are too, and you're stronger than you think. If this story resonated with you, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from, what time it is where you are, and if you've ever faced betrayal and came out stronger on the other side. Let's build a community of men who've survived, who've thrived, and who refuse to let their story end in defeat, because your story isn't over. It's just beginning. Thanks for listening, and remember, you're not alone.